Welcome to St Mary's University Twickenham, and day 2 of 7 Stones 2022. You might remember at the end of part 1 I'd fallen asleep on a road somewhere. Well, on day 2 I woke up super early to have breakfast and then head back to the university to make liberal use of the facilities. Welcome to Battle Camper. For anyone who hasn't watched part 1, 7 Stones is a doubles Middle-earth tournament with an all-consuming focus on theme and fluff. I was playing with Carl, and if you point-blank refuse to start with part 1 where the list is covered, I will simply say that it's Aragorn, the King of the Dead, Dernhelm Theoden, some horsey boys and some ghosty boys. On day 1 we'd had 1 win and 2 not quite as wins. On day 2 of the event, each team is sorted into a knockout group depending on their performance in day 1. The winner of each group gets a prize. So if we can win all 3 games today, a tall order though that is, we're going home with something. And there were some awesome prizes available, emphasis on some. And yes, I did steal this footage from the TO without their permission, and yes, I would do it again. The first game for the day was no escape from the doubles section of the matched play guide. In short, each force is split into 2 and are designated as either primary or secondary. You are supposed to kill the leaders of both forces and break the enemy in their totality. In this game we were facing Tom, Bert and Bill, Bilbo's Trolls, and my old arch-nemesis, Goblin Town. It's a slightly faffy deployment type, but an interesting one. Our primary forces will be deploying in the central 2 bands, and our secondary forces in the outer 2 bands, meaning the 2 halves of our armies are going to be split off from one another. Primary forces are determined by a roll-off in the pairs. For us, the Rohan will be the primary force. For them, it was Goblin Town. By the time my Rohan had deployed, the board looked like this. I'd learned, finally, not to split my forces in deployment, so I'd basically just wedged them all in the only place they could feasibly fit. Then the sweating began, as the Goblin Town forces, including the King, Gollum, captains and a buttload of goblins, swarmed in behind me. Carl deployed his ghosty boys as close as he could to the goblin lines. We knew the Rohan would not last long before reinforcements were needed. The Trolls deployed in the opposite corner. The teams held their breaths for priority and the inevitable move-off. So much for Rohan depended on those charge bonuses. If the goblins got the move, they'd switch them all off.
Take it away, Alex.
Oh god. I accept no responsibility for what's about to happen. I can beat a 3. Oh, I can draw a 3. 2. Oh, I can draw a 2 again.
Let's do this for next hour and a
Yeah.
half. Call it a draw.
I'm enjoying it. 2 again. No! We'll do Theoden. Points on Theoden.
In return, Evil called with the Goblin King, and it was time for a truly intense first turn roll-off. Okay, pausing, we can talk about how disastrous that was in a moment, but first, we need to talk about the audacity of that roll. Let's watch it in slow motion. Okay, rolling, looking good, it's gonna be a 6, it's gonna be a 6, oh, it's a 2. One more time. It's rolling from right to left in a way that physics would make you expect it should, and then it just flips back.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, it's not off to an ideal start, mate.
Yeah, it's not. Never mind.
With their heroic move, the tsunami of goblins slammed into my Riders of Rohan's seawall. Every rider who was unfortunate enough to be on their side was tagged. With Theoden being just stuck there, I declined to call with me on my heroic move, and Theoden didn't move, so it was basically just nullified. That meant that I could at least fall back a few inches and prevent my riders from being trapped between the goblins and their own companions. To stop myself from being completely enclosed, I decided to charge the incoming trolls. I started right at the end of the line. The trick was to try and stop my models in combat with the goblins from being trapped. Should a model try to charge one of the trolls, fail its courage check and have to stay where it is.
We're having it, 9. Yes, so just as far right as you possibly can on that. Okay, so I might do strikes on Dernhelm and on Theoden.
Now Theoden wasn't in combat, but I wanted to strike up because the Goblin King's heroic combat could land him in combat before the end of the combats. First up is the King's heroic combat against a single unfortunate rider. A 6 would at least get the King to burn some might really early on in the game.
Okay, cool, so 1 in return. Let's get a 6. No.
Ooh, so close. Next, it was time for Grinner, who'd also called a heroic combat. Now, I'm probably being dense, but I genuinely can't find him amongst this seething mass of goblins. He's somewhere to the left of Theoden.
Grinner. Oh, looks like his friend.
So that's just a 4 for this rider to beat.
You can do it. You can do it. Okay, so 1 strike. No.
After this very measured stroke of luck, the goblins started to show how you should never underestimate them, even in this choke point where they're not taking full advantage of their numbers. This is just 1 round of combat.
Anyway, oh my god.
What one is it?
5.
5. Is that another one?
That's another one.
Jesus Christ! That's another 2.
That's another 2, mate. Yep.
That's 8 gone.
It was a grim scene after that opening foray. 44.444 recurring % of my miniatures had been destroyed, and I only had a single goblin scalp to show for it. I felt due a stroke of luck as we went into combats against the trolls. First was the troll on the far side fighting 1 royal guardsman and 1 rider. I got my 6, so the troll would need to match it. Which it promptly did. It would now have 3 chances to kill a royal guardsman on a 4-up.
Okay. Yeah.
3.
No, not yet.
Point to might.
It's not worth the might. I'll go for him again. Oh, I'm going to regret this. And again. Yes, okay.
You got it.
Just the Royal Guard is dead. And the Guard is dead. And then I'm back to wait.
Now it was time for Bill v Dernhelm. Both were striking.
So mine goes up to 10.
Okay, so I need a 5. What'd you get? So up to 10 as well.
Everything to play for.
So vaguely green is Dernhelm.
So I need a 6 to stay in this.
Good start. No.
So Dernhelm wins the fight and Bill declines to spend his remaining might to take it back. He figures instead that he can simply tank the hits.
I'm going to risk getting pummeled.
Well, that's pretty good. 2 is the fate, but yes, if I might them both up, I guarantee a kill. I mean, I'm in it for the spike, mate. I'm in it for the
Okay,
spike.
go. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, we'll might them both up, so she's out of might.
So Dernhelm takes Bill, the leader of their secondary force. This is a glimmer of hope in what has, by all accounts, been a pretty grueling turn.
It's our last hurrah. Are we broken yet?
We have lost 9, so we are 5 off breaking.
5 off breaking?
Yeah, I think we'll use the Palantir to...
Okay.
If you're not familiar with the Palantir, it is an object specific to this tournament that we picked up in day 1. It allows us, once per game, to declare that we're going to automatically win a priority roll-off. It's currently being held by Aragorn, and it could be stolen by the opponent in any game. They decided not to call any heroics, so we needed to get some serious mileage out of this priority. I had an ambitious plan to tie up both remaining trolls, create a wall between the sea of goblins and Theoden using my few remaining riders, and then use Theoden striking up to try and take on the King of Goblin Town.
Let's do Theoden's terror check first.
Needing a 5 on this, and I get it.
So, banner courage check. Yeah, we're in. And the last guy's courage check.
2 there.
Come on. Yes, full house.
I tried to keep the thick of the goblin ranks away from my heroes while they finished off the monsters. This was our best chance of trying to seize a win, while our ghosts slowly but methodically moved through the goblins from the other side. The goblins that had occupied the fortress in the middle were also getting close. They hadn't even joined the fight yet. I do take this opportunity to remind you that this is turn 2. Turn 2!
Unsurprisingly, Aragorn will call it heroic combat. Yeah, unsurprisingly.
Aragorn's heroic combat went off without a hitch, and he killed the 1 goblin he was in combat with. Check him out.
But can you just tell me that's not the second goblin we've killed?
That is the second.
Oh god.
8 points down.
Aragorn was calling these combats just to try and get as many goblins down in a turn as possible, and that's really it. However, the remaining combats weren't very successful for Carl. Even Aragorn lost to goblins, although he didn't take any damage. Combats for the regular horsemen trying to hold back the tide were slightly more successful this turn, although that's a very low bar. They killed 2 goblins, which doubled our kill tally, and I lost 1 in return to a combat with Gollum. The first of the key combats was Dernhelm and a pair of riders v Bill the Troll.
So I've got 3 on Dernhelm this time because I don't get the bonus, and I get 1 on each of the other 2. Beat that. You did.
He'd first try and kill the Royal Guard on a 4, and succeeds, and then try and kill the regular rider of Rohan on a 4, and succeeds. Then they opted for Dernhelm's horse on a 3.
Throne rider for Erwin, so she can reroll with expert rider. Fine, she's getting up. And for Merry, who's not an expert rider, but he's still getting up.
Now it was time for a very heart-palpitatish combat as Theoden and the Bannerbearer took on the King of Goblin Town.
My strike, so you're 8. 6? Alright, so anything but a 1. Anything but a 1. There we go, so I'm up to 10. And you're trapped, so I'm doing this twice.
Having won the combat, we were wounding on 5s and did a staggering 6 wounds. Even with the King's 3-up blubber save, I liked our chances.
Easy saved everything!
Before rolling these dice, I didn't even know that the Goblin King had a save, and I had been confused as to why they weren't more worried.
When I was rolling those, I was like, that's 3 wounds? They're not reacting at all! That's another 3 wounds, what?
With that moan out the way, it was back to priority.
1 to beat. You can lose if you roll a 1.
Thank you.
Are you calling any heroics?
Bert called the only heroic move this phase, which allowed the 2 trolls to tag a rider each. I didn't exactly have many models left to move, but by the time I was done, my little clump looked like this. Essentially, Theoden and Merry had bravely come to the aid of the Bannerbearer, who had been charged by Bill. And then with my 2 spare riders, one had just been fed to the Goblin King, and the last one, who had the horn, had been used to just block off the way to stop the Goblin Horde from coming to the Troll's assistance.
Those 2 are on him, those 2 are on him. Aragorn on those 2, and the King of the Dead on that guy. We've only lost 12 so far. This will be turn 3, and we're not broken.
It's better than we could possibly have hoped for.
Yeah.
In combat, Aragorn declared a heroic using his 3 points of might, and Theoden called a strike to beat the Trolls fight 6. Without any might of her own, Eowyn would need to win unassisted. What made matters worse is that I'd stupidly missed the fact that Gollum had joined Theoden's fight. This would halve Theoden's fight value, making his strike irrelevant. We decided to proceed with that fight first.
I need you to fluff this. Do you want to roll first? Because if you get a 6, I don't need to roll.
So I do not have a 6.
So,
Ooh.
yeah. So I've got it. Wonderful. And with you being trapped, I'm doubling that.
In this fight, Theoden is assisted by Merry and that rider with the banner. The latter 2 need 6s.
Oh, that's 2.
And Theoden needed 5s.
Oh. Bloody hell!
Well, Alex, that was a great roll.
Thank you very much.
With Bill dead, against the odds, we were on to the Goblin King against his sacrificial rider.
Okay, you've got 6, so you've won it. I'm very trapped. It's very dead.
Next, it was my Horn v Grinner and Associates.
That's Grinner. 3.
1, you've got it. Oh, I can re-roll for the banner, actually, sorry. I forgot to do that last time, still. Slight improvement.
Kills.
Yep. Horn is gone. And now I've got
14.
So now let's go with the troll here. I get her 2 attacks.
This is Tom the Troll v a dismounted, mightless Eowyn, and I took the fight on a 5.
2 strikes. 6, so I think that's a wound.
My trolls are getting...
Yeah. We're taking our vengeance.
Despite this run of luck, we were now broken. We had to keep beating the odds to stand a chance.
So banner next.
Banner guys charging.
Lovely, so 2 with -1. So down to 5. You've got it.
They need a 6 on the white or a 5 on the blue dice to kill.
Yes, and I can't give it to anyone. So the banner is lost, I'm afraid.
That's 15. Broken.
The movement phase was, well, predictably quick, given I had 2 models left on the table, and Carl was still simply trying to wade his way through hordes of goblins. After the goblins had finished their move, the precariousness of our plan was laid bare. Bear in mind that at this point, we're still winning. Yes, we're broken, but we've killed one of their leaders, and they haven't even harmed either of ours. But Theoden needs to survive against the Goblin King, a troll, and seemingly a quadrillion goblins, for long enough for Aragorn to sweep in and save him.
That's us done with it?
Yeah, that's movement done. I've got an heroic combat, so I'm going to use that.
Yeah, why not?
Yep, 6. Yeah. Yep, 6. Hurrah! I killed a goblin!
Yay! 4 points.
So, you guys.
After that, we moved on to the Lone Rider on the far side v 6 goblins.
So 1 to me. 2. You very much got it.
He's trapped, and they need just 1 5 to get him killed.
Trapped.
Yeah.
Dead.
Merry won his fight against a soul goblin, but failed to kill him. We then had the all-important Theoden fight. If he dies, then our lead dies with him. He's fighting the Goblin King, Gollum, Grenna, and some goblins. Thanks to Gollum, they have the fight value, and I set the bar at a 5. They fail to match it with the Goblin King. They fail to match it with Gollum. And they get it with Grenna. Then just to rub it in, they get it with the goblins as well.
I've spent my fate points, so he's dead.
Oh, you get 2 VPs for that, guys.
Eowyn quickly followed suit. This made Merry my last model standing, and to be honest, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Meanwhile, Aragorn and the ghosts caused very little damage this turn, which is frustrating because they really were our last hope now. To make matters worse, we went on to promptly lose priority.
5, 1.
You take it.
With their move, they put 2 goblins and a troll on Merry, which seemed harsh. The goblins then closed ranks to stop Aragorn from getting to the king. Now, although things look bleak, do bear in mind that Carl hasn't lost a single miniature yet. And the goblins aren't impossibly far from breaking. There is a slim chance.
I have to say, though, I thought Alex's spirited defence on that side of the field was great.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was great. I, on the other hand, have done nothing.
But that wasn't really your fault, to be fair.
Yeah. Heroic combat with Aragorn.
Aragorn's combat predictably went off, claiming himself another goblin, and then it was time for Merry v the troll, 2 goblins and 2 supports. Spoiler alert.
He's very dead. Very, very dead indeed. Thank you very much. It is now entirely down to you.
Brilliant. King of the Dead. Gets a 6. 5, 3, 2 dead.
After the King of the Dead killing another 2 goblins, it was time for this goblin at the back here. And even though I played this game and edited this video, I genuinely couldn't tell you how he ended up back here. So far behind our lines.
Oh, the heroic goblin at the back gets a 3. Gets a 6. 4. He dead. Priority?
Sam's dice is representing something.
6 priority.
There's clearly going to be...
Team Evil called a heroic move with the goblin captain, and Carl countercalled with Aragorn's free point.
Okay, so
Good luck.
and it goes to them.
At the end of the heroic move, counter moves, and regular moves, the board looked like this, with a classic late game clump on the far side of the board. Sensibly though, they'd kept the Goblin King out of combat, which means there's no way we can win it now in the last turn. Carl did his best to vent his righteous fury on the goblin lines, and to be fair to him, he took a few of the little bastards with him. Then, in the very last swing of the game, Carl managed to kill Gollum.
Oh, there we go.
That's 3 wounds.
Unlucky, buddy.
Right, I think we're done, aren't we? Thanks, guys. It's been great to actually play a game at last.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah. Excellent.
Well, your army didn't die.
No.
Did you lose a single model?
No. You suck. Cheers, Adam.
What a phenomenal game that had been. Long-time sufferers of this channel will know that I acknowledge there's a lot of things that can make and break a game, but none make it quite as completely as a good story. In this game, the Rohan had been ambushed by the goblins, caught between their lines and the trolls on the other side. They'd lost more than half their number in the opening charge. After that, Theoden and Dernhelm had admirably rallied the troops and defended themselves to the last. They took 2 trolls with them. All the while, Aragorn and his reinforcements fought ferociously, trying to carve a path through the seemingly endless hordes of goblins. Sadly, when the fighting was done and the mist cleared, all they found was shaken spears and splintered shields. I guess you could describe it as a sword day. The Red Day, if you were so inclined. So we'd been knocked out at the first round, and Carl and I debated whether or not to rush for lunch or to set up our models for the painting competition. Carl's miniatures certainly deserved showing off, and frankly, I just like arranging my little toy soldiers, so we took the time to do it. There were some breathtaking entries, such as this magnificent entrance to Moria by Elliot and Joel. I love the Balrog's flame emanating from the depths. There was a fantastic Helm's Deep causeway by James and Sam, and this gateway to Erebor. It's colossal. Just look at it. God knows how many hours went into this, but it's made me want to do better. So after lunch, it was into game 2 and deciding who would deploy first.
Are you rolling for us?
Yeah, I want to roll low.
Yeah.
I need 1 or 2.
You didn't need to do it then.
Oh, God damn it.
In this game, we'd be playing Callum and Ashley, who happily also had a Pelennor Fields themed list. On the Mordor side, they had Gothmog, Gothmog's Enforcer, Captain, Banner, and a shed load of orcs. Deployment for me was difficult here. I was super paranoid about the Mummock and so wanted to remain 8 inches away from the line in all locations because I knew that it was going down last. However, there wasn't an enormous amount of room, and this did mean just shoveling my riders together essentially wherever they would fit. The game was Lords of Battle, which, of course, means deploying right up to the centre line and just having one big old kill fest. I was feeling reasonably confident. If the King of the Dead could snipe out the Mummock like it did on day 1, and my riders could get 1 or 2 good charges on the Uruks, we were in good shape. In my view, the key was not to rush that charge. I had time on my side because I was more manoeuvrable than they were, and all I needed to do was to play keep away with the Mummock. Cool, alright, so we were on to priority then.
Yeah.
Do you trust me? No, I rolled it first last time and I fluffed it, you do it.
No, I just rolled for the deployment. So
oh, goddamn, alright. I fucking told you, sorry. Whilst I'd been sat here very confident that I was outside of 8 inches of the Mummock, and that was true, I was reminded that I was within 11 inches of the Mummock, and that the Mummock has March. In fact, 11 inches would get the Mummock to Theoden, and all of a sudden my heart started beating rather quickly again. We'll call a heroic move with Theoden. It's only at this point we realised we'd jumped the gun slightly and had to row back for the formalities.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck, have fun. Yeah. Bit late, but good thinking. Yeah.
Must be a grudge match then, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, no time for names, only slaughter. With that done, Gothmog called his own move, so we really had to win the roll-off. We didn't. Did you guys hear about the update where Theoden causes terror? FAQ? First, Gothmog moves up and creates a suitably devastating 6-inch bubble. The rest of the orcs caught in the move then moved up, mainly just out of the way of the Mummock, but some tagged the dead on the far side of the board. The Mummock then began its terrifying trample. Its first obstacle would be this Rohan tactical tree. As a reminder, we've been treating trees throughout the tournament as trampleable with D6 and 1 wound.
Okay, so
Think 1s and 2s. Think 1s and 2s.
by the tree. So kills the tree. Then the rider. So it does 4 wounds on each of the rider
And the horse, yeah.
So let's do rider think.
So if you kill him, which you do.
He's dead.
Oh, this is Theoden.
Then it's Theoden.
Oh my god. One.
That is 4.
He's dead. He's only got 1 fate.
Sorry, mate. Sorry. And then the last, is that a Royal Guard? It's still 3.
It's a Royal Guard. He's dead.
Also dead.
That was a big move.
Finishes.
Oh, you've got to save the day, man.
I've got to say that.
Or you've always got to save the day. At any rate, with Theoden's heroic move turned off, it was time for their priority move, and they moved the rest of the orc line up, as far as possible, into the dead. It's fair to say that my early rosy assessment of the game had been quite comprehensively shattered. Realistically, our only hope now was that the king could get over to this side of the board and snip out the Mummock before it did any more significant damage. We'll go with the Royal Guard next, because it's not doing a check, because it's fearless.
Is that only when Theoden is alive?
It's only when Theoden's alive. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I was trying to forget. Royal Guard then. But he's having it. He's having it anyway. He wants vengeance for his fallen liege. And then we're going to go with this one with the bow and arrow at the back here. Again, these guys, they are
very courageous.
Keen, very courageous or foolish. There's a fine line, measured only by success. The one in front of the banner here. Yes, double 6s. Where was this rolling? Like, all tournament. With the rest of my move, I really just pressed in around the Mummock, and any riders that couldn't fit headed off to the far side of the board to help out the ghosties.
Okay, I've got 6 shots. So I've got 4 bowmen on this side who are going to go in the way, tree, banner, horn. So only 1. So in the way for the tree. Hits the tree.
With that easily resolved, we're on to heroics for the fight phase. We'll do a strength on Dernhelm.
Okay.
Spend 1 of Airwind's might, leave Mary's intact.
No more heroics on this side, so should we go straight into
Priority fights?
Yep.
So I'll roll
you
up
do your strength.
strength.
Yep.
adding D3. It still brings it from 6 to 5, so
Yes, that is
it's not
true.
awful.
Okay.
So you've got a 6, so I need 1. There's a 6, and I've got the fight. Hers first, wounding on 5s. I'd better get at least 1 5 now, I tell you.
Oh, that is such a shame.
5
on 6s.
riders. 1.
So that's 1. I'll just do the courage test
I've never had success
on the Mummock now,
I love the
Okay.
idea of them.
so that he's fine.
Now, one of the great things about editing these videos is obviously you have to watch them back, which means you can kick yourself all over again when you spot all the errors. For example, there the Mummock wasn't fine because it was dealing with a courage of 4 and it was within 12 inches of the King of the Dead and his Harbinger of Evil special rule, which means he should have failed and stampeded, but I didn't spot it at the time, and now I just get to loathe myself for it. Bizarrely, there was not a single wound dealt in the rest of the fight phase, and we were back to priority.
All right.
Right. That's back to both then. Can we, let's orb it.
Yeah, let's use the Palantir.
We'll use a Palantir.
Okay, so I'll call it a heroic move with the Beastmaster.
Move with the Beastmaster, I'm going to have to counter-call with, I'll spend Mary's Might this time.
By this point, I'm sure I don't need to tell you how important this roll-off is. The Mummock could destroy a good portion of our army this turn, and we need to lock it in place. That being the case, I'm sure I also don't need to tell you what happened.
Right. Where can I do the most damage?
The Mummock decided to go for the clump of riders heading off to the right. It also decided to reverse because its tusks kept on catching on all the models. We noticed that a couple of orcs were in the Mummock's chosen flight path, which means they're going to be in for a trampling themselves, which meant we had to decide, do they count towards the points for Lords of Battle? I took a firm position on the matter.
But we're fucking having them.
Our orc first.
Yeah,
Dead.
definitely got him. A noble sacrifice.
And
So
then
then
it
we're going to
hits
hit this
a
one
rider
first thing,
next.
and then that one. Definitely
yeah,
dead. Dead. Dead.
Dead.
Dead.
Dead.
Dead.
Dead.
Dead.
Dead.
Please be stopped by no.
Kill the tree. Dead.
I actually feel really bad about what's happening.
Yeah, a massive smile on his face. Ah, what a shame, lads. What a shame.
That one trample had taken the board from looking like this to like this. All of these riders, which includes the banner and the horn, are dead. This caused us to be broken, which meant that we'd roll a dice at the end of each turn, and on a roll of a 1 or a 2, the game would come to an end.
Right, now we want the game to end. So, if you guys could do the honours of determining if the game ends or not.
Because we roll low. You do it.
Well, because you had priority. Go on, I'll roll it then.
No, I'm happy to. Okay. Oh,
Do you know what? You fluffed 2 rolls off.
that was a 6. It was.
I've fluffed 1 so far, so I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Go on. Go on. You. Good game, guys. Well
Good
done.
game. That was good fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It had been fun. I know that we had some rotten luck, but I also know that our opponents had had some rotten luck with the Mummock earlier in the tournament. Mummocks are not OP. They're just very all or nothing. In this case, it was all. And you know what? That's fine. As a proud Mummock owner myself, I resent the idea that anyone should go home from a 6-game tournament without getting at least one good trample session. So after what was probably the shortest battle report I've ever produced, we were all filed outside. It was time for what I understand to be another proud Seven Stones tradition, the group picture. Now, the great thing about this picture is, no matter where you look, something excellent is happening. From Legolas riding these 2 Mummocks, to Barliman, to these 2 golfers, and even though I did have it explained to me, I still can't explain the reasoning behind that to you. And then there's Alan and Jay wearing top hats. Now I can explain that one to you, but I decline to do so because I think it's better that way. We've got Gimli, Theoden, Gandalf and Bilbo, this guy being carried off to fates unknown in the background. And then there's me, and you'll notice that I've got 2 addendums to my costume, my helmet and my hobby horse. They cost me nearly £40 between them, and this is the only time they'll appear in the 2 hours of footage that I've uploaded of this event. Never tell me I don't know how to make prudent financial decisions. Finally, for the tournament, we were playing the Clubley brothers, David and James. I'd heard their names around the community, so I was intrigued to see what kind of a game we were going to have. Their list was nice and simple. It was straight up Thorin's company. The TOs had been kind with the scenario too, keeping it simple for fatigued brains. It was domination, which involves deploying right up to the centre line and contesting 5 objectives. Thorin's company essentially just lined up across the centre line of the board. Now, I would tell you which dwarf is which at this stage, but I don't know, and you won't remember, so we'll just flag it as we go through. There was no real science or, well, thought at all that went into our deployment. Carl put his block of dead down on the right-hand side, and then I basically just clumped up around this building, splitting my forces so that half was on the objective on the near side, and the other half was backing Carl up to the hilt. Now, you might recall, if you've seen the first video, that 7 teams were nominated for Best Army, and each of them essentially got a Palantir card that would allow them to do something a bit special in today's games. Now, the Clubley brothers were one of those teams, and their Palantir allows their leader, in this case Thorin, to call a free heroic move per turn on a roll of a 4 up.
Lovely. Well, have fun. Good luck.
Good luck, guys.
We had to start with the classic debate as to who, out of Carl and I, would have to roll first turn priority.
Do you no, can you please?
He does for
Well,
that.
I'll do it, I'm doing it.
Do you want half of it? My
I got a 2.
The dwarves, however, didn't want priority, and so they used Balin's Longbeard special rule to re-roll it, looking for a 1 or a 2.
Hey! Right, okay.
Where we are.
There was nothing particularly clever about our move. I left the rider with the horn behind to guard one objective, and I left another rider in these ruins to grab another, and Carl sent a ghost up to the top floor of that far building to grab a third. The only challenge for me was, I've never played an army like this before, which is just all heroes, extremely low model count. Tagging them was difficult because if I just sent a single rider into one, it seemed like that rider was basically doomed to die, but they obviously hadn't left space for me to charge multiple riders into single dwarves. I'm sure there are ways to deal with situations like this, but I figured that I'd rather get the charge bonuses than be charged. And if I did manage to take a few dwarves with a few lone riders, then I'm getting exceptional value for money. With their few remaining moves, Ori moved in to help out Thorin, and I hope you're keeping notes. Balin paired off this rider at the end of the row. Both attacked the ghost at the other end of the line, peeling him off Nori's now one-on-one fight with Aragorn. With only Dwanan left to move, basically everyone was engaged, and I was bracing for a bloody first round of combat. In the end, he nestled in behind, I think, Bomber and another dwarf of some description, unable to reach a target himself this turn.
Let's spend some might.
Yeah, I thought you might.
I'm not just going to declare what all the heroic actions were and expect you to remember them because there's a bunch, so we'll get to them when they become relevant. First was a heroic combat by Thorin, assisted by Ori, versus a single charging rider of Rohan.
I got a 6. You don't have a 6.
For sake, bro. You'll have to use 2 points to might. Just go for it. Last 2 points. Thorin's at might.
Oh, bloody hell.
It's that. And on rider.
You better kill him.
Or
No.
you'll have to use his point to might.
So between Thorin and Ori, they've just spent 3 points of might. Both of their stores are now dry, just to kill a single rider of Rohan.
Jesus.
Ori charged the Royal Guard, and Thorin came in to tag Theoden. Next, it was time for another heroic combat, Philly versus a charging rider of his own.
4, 5. You've got it. Have I got a banner? I do have a banner, so let's re-roll the 2. Not that it matters.
Five to kill, bro. 5 to kill.
You got him? That's this guy here.
And then, yeah, you may as well go help out Thorin, I guess. I don't think we can trap him, so don't go too far around.
There was one more heroic combat. This rider here versus a dwarf of some description.
Are you ready, Alex?
No. 5s. 4. I've got it. Unless you want to might up.
So
that's
he
it.
will go balls to the wall and use his last might.
Oh my god, you're draining the might.
I know. Need him 5. Reroll him 1.
I hope you get it now.
And help out his uncle. Just better pay off.
It was now time for Aragorn v Nori, maybe? And they both struck, so it's time for a strike-off.
10. We're both at 10.
Total 10.
Yeah.
6.
5. So I will use a point of might to force the roll off.
So time for a roll-off, and we decided that the dwarves would be evil because, well, Thorin's a bit of a knob.
6. So it goes to me.
Do you want to might it and kill him? He's just like, drain his might.
So Nori gets on the wrong end of Anduril and pays the price. There were no more casualties on Carl's side of the board this turn, which sadly is more than I could say for my side of the board. It started with me losing this rider at the end of the row here before we moved on to Theoden's critical combat.
Theoden on an intimidatingly large number of people.
So,
Six. So you win it on fights.
so this is foreign.
Okay, we're wounding on
5.
non.
Killy on the horse, first strike.
Okay, it's an armoured horse. So
five.
Fives, yep.
Yep.
I'll spend horse lord spend his fate on the horse. No!
Two might.
No. So Throne Rider.
So Theoden lost his horse, but at least the rest of the attacks on the man himself passed without incident.
I'm not going to lie, guys, I'm breathing a sigh of relief over here. And he died first turn last game. I was like, can I just please? Just one turn. Yeah, exactly. So let's go 1-on-1. I got 2 because I charged. 6.
Does that need to be in the tray?
I didn't reroll my last one, so keep it.
Okay, so 5.
You've got him. And the next one along.
Dory then killed 2 riders that both had charged him with a single swing of his axe. Impressive.
Now here's a trick for you.
Don't die.
No. You know when you're both rolling in there?
Yeah.
Roll once, see what the result is, and then you
See if
roll
I can
yours.
to knock him
You see what
over.
happened there? 6 settled. I
saw.
And it's flipped it over. So don't be too
He's
eager.
a cheeky bastard, isn't he?
Don't be too hasty.
So,
With that established, it was time for Dernhelm and Bofa to engage in a strike-off.
So I have to wait for him to roll.
yeah.
He's a fight 8.
Oh no!
Yay! If you kept the last one, you got. No, you kept the last one. She's got 4 and he's got 2. He's got might.
Strike, they couldn't call that combat.
He's very much,
I think you've absolutely nailed him.
Lovely stuff.
Finally, it was time for everyone's favourite dwarf, Balin, v a single charging rider.
5's high. I've got it. With the bonus, 3 5s.
Doesn't need strength 4. Oh, you got 2 fate.
It's a big moment. That's one. He's dead, yeah.
Needs to make time.
Good job, Ryder.
It had been a brutal first turn, but with some key upsets on both sides. Yes, I'd lost half of my force, but Carl's, as is now tradition, was still fully intact. I'd also kept my heroes alive and taken some dwarfs with me. Going into a critical role for priority, we decided to burn our Palantir to take it by default. They tried to use their special ability to call a free heroic move on a 4+.
That's a 2!
But they fluffed it. In response, the dwarves called a move with Dory. I countercalled with Dernhelm, looking to get some mileage out of whatever horses I had left.
Think high thoughts. That's a low one. What is it with us and roll-offs, mate?
With their heroic move, they simply tagged up all the riders on the left, therefore shutting down Dernhelm's move, and they tagged Theoden from the back. With the other heroic move, Bomba started by very bravely charging both a Warrior of the Dead and Aragorn. After this, the rest of the dwarves just sort of shuffled in, and all of a sudden my palms were feeling quite sweaty. My knees weak and my arms were heavy. You know, there was no vomit on my sweater already though, because it's been a while since I've had mum's spaghetti, but I was nervous, and I was trying on the surface to look calm and ready.
Oh my god, I'm going to be spent this turn.
In our desperation, we abandoned our pursuit of the far side objective with the Ghost, and I'd already abandoned the near side objective with my Rider. If we couldn't stem the bleeding, or whatever the equivalent is that Ghosts do, then the dwarves had 3 objectives in easy reach. We had to fight them. We prepared for a tense, exciting turn, when... That's right, long-time viewers of this channel will have known it was coming, the inevitable technical issue. I won't go into it, save us to say that the only camera we had surviving was the overhead camera that you're watching now. So we're finishing this report as an overview time-lapse. I'm gutted that this happened in the Clublies battle. Whilst every player we played over the weekend had been fantastic, they really embodied the spirit of this event even as the tides turned against them. And my god, did the tide turn against them. A mightless, fateless, horseless Theoden would stand strong against Thorin, Killy and Philly for the rest of the game. The rest of the cavalry would prove remarkably hard to shift as well, even when they were failing to get the charge. So whilst I didn't really gain any ground, I did hold it, and that was important because it gave Carl the opportunity to sweep across the table, just laying low everything he came across. It's fitting that my first 7 stones should end this way, an event that prides itself on theminess above all else. And I'm not talking about the actually quite profound allegory that has been told on the tabletop here, encapsulating Tolkien's own view that the theme of Lord of the Rings is about death and the mortal struggle for immortality, as nearly every living creature is wiped off the table by the inevitable tide of the physical, tangible manifestations of death themselves. No, I'm talking about the more mundane, sort of personal theme of the tournament, which has been me fucking up and Carl having to come to the rescue. It literally happened in every single game we played. But in any event, it was a whole load of fun. I think this game could have gone either way, right up to the last moments. With the gaming for the event over, I reflected on how this event absolutely nails the line between theminess on one hand and competitiveness on the other. Players really do get into the bespoke rules of the event and have a lot of fun creating outlandish lists they wouldn't normally get to take, but it's still a GBHL event at the end of the day, and you do have to keep your wits about you. After some remarkably efficient tidying away, we were into wrapping up and the prize giving. First is my favourite kind of competition, the raffle, the kind of one where you can go home with material reward despite having no skill to merit it.
Oh, mate.
In trying to choose a prize, I spotted one that caused me some confusion.
What the fuck's...
It turned out to be a photograph of one of the TO's faces. The alternative was a replica of Gandalf's pipe from Weta Workshop. The crowd took a clear position on what I should choose. Being an amateur hack of an entertainer, unable to spot good content if it bites me on the nose, I didn't listen. At least the next guy seemed to know what was what. Look at that, no messing around, a true showman, and I'm sure it will make him very happy. Next, it was time for Best Painted, and, to my very real joy and surprise, now, I'm under no illusion about who did the heavy lifting in that pairing. Carl to the rescue once again. However, I'm just pleased enough not to have held him back. Particularly since some of the other entries were fantastic, I'm going to take this opportunity to be proud of myself, earned or not. Winning most sporting was Jay and Alan. I know Alan, and it's great to see him take this one. He actually played my first ever game of Middle-earth with me, which has obviously left an impression, and once when we were playing 40k, he felt so bad that his Mortarion exploded, wiping out half my army, that he bought me a fancy exorbitant latte with a little gingerbread man in top. He's awesome, although I'm not entirely sure why he's making this face. The winners of Best Army, and therefore considered to be the overall winners of Seven Stones in its entirety, was Matt and John. It was so well deserved. Look at the effort they went to. It was a brie list, and I understand they used some creative stand-ins to create a full roster. The army was beautifully converted and painted, and they used this magnificent display board. They used tea-stained menus for their army lists and handed out and used little frothy beer dice. I feel utterly inspired to commit next year like they did this year. So as I loaded up the van and headed home, my mind was racing. With many thanks indeed to you for watching, to the TOs for organising, and to Carl for putting up with me and bailing me out all weekend. There's various social media stuff you can follow in the description, of course. A huge shout out to JMac, Sean and David, members of the Hobby Vanguard, my Buy Me a Coffee membership scheme. If that pun alone doesn't merit membership, which I suggest that it very much does, well, I'm about to raffle off a set of the Games Workshop Angmar dice and a set of the Easterling dice. Obviously, currently, that means that 2 out of 3 members are going to win. But if you join before the end of June, you can screw over the existing members. You'll be automatically entered into those raffles. Every member gets some free stuff now and again at the expense of the Earth's valuable natural resources. Thank you very much again for watching. We love you, Baldo, and if it's quite alright, we need you, Baldo. And if you win that fight, we'll love you, Baldo. Just kill Gimli and we'll say